Music and laughter filled the backyard, the kind of sound that celebrates ordinary joy. Balloons swayed, children ran through sprinklers, and for one sunny afternoon, everything felt right. Then came the flashing lights. A frightened neighbor had seen too many people, made a call, and within moments, that peace shattered. The crowd froze, unsure what they'd done wrong. But what happened next stunned everyone, especially the ones who dialed 911. Because when the father stepped outside, his uniform told a story they never expected. A story that would expose more than bias. It would reveal a truth this neighborhood could no longer ignore. Marcus Johnson loved simple things: smoke curling from a grill, his daughter's laugh spilling through the yard, the smell of barbecue sauce mixing with summer air. After 10 years serving his city, wearing a crisp blue uniform that carried both pride and weight, home was where he could finally breathe. His wife wanted the day to be perfect, a birthday full of color, cake, and cousins racing barefoot through the grass. For Marcus, it wasn't just a celebration. It was a reminder that peace was possible, even after the chaos he saw every day. But around the corner, someone else saw something else. From behind lace curtains, eyes narrowed, a phone lifted, and suspicion took root where joy once lived. What began as a family gathering was about to become a headline, a moment that would test what community really meant. The music stopped mid-beat, cut off by the distant wail of a siren. At first, Marcus thought it must be heading somewhere else, maybe a crash on Main Street, maybe a call across town. But the sound grew louder, sharp and deliberate, until red and blue lights splashed across the fence. His daughter's laughter fell silent. The smell of charcoal still hung in the air, but the whole yard felt suddenly cold. 2 patrol cars, then 3. Doors slammed. Voices filled the air, fast, clipped, demanding. Neighbors peeked out from porches, drawn by the commotion they themselves had caused. A child whispered, "Are we in trouble?" while Marcus's wife pulled the little ones closer. It wasn't the first time people had looked at them like they didn't belong, but never with uniforms, never in their own backyard. Officers moved quickly, scanning the group, asking questions that sounded less like concern and more like suspicion. Who lives here? Where's the homeowner? Marcus stepped forward, his instinct from years of training telling him to stay calm, to keep the situation controlled. Yet as a black man in that moment, the gap between cop and target felt razor-thin. He lifted his hand slightly, not from guilt, but from too many memories of how small misunderstandings could spiral. The irony stung. He'd stood on countless doorsteps just like these officers, called to investigate noise complaints, always hoping to de-escalate rather than inflame. But staring back at the badges now, he didn't see a team. He saw fear behind their eyes, the kind that made hands tighten around holsters. A teenager tried to record on his phone. One officer barked orders for everyone to stay still. The air turned brittle. Then someone shouted, "Get the man in charge." In a way, they already had him. But to them, he was just another guest at the suspicious gathering. Every second stretched thin with tension, the smell of sweat and disbelief hanging heavy. His wife's voice trembled as she whispered, "Marcus." For a split second, no one moved. The hum of engines, the flicker of lights, it all seemed to dissolve into a silence thick enough to choke on. The officers stood frozen, eyes darting between Marcus's badge and his face, as if the two couldn't possibly belong together. A detective. A father. A black man in his own yard with the same uniform they wore. It didn't fit their script. Marcus felt every heartbeat echo in his ears. The children huddled closer behind their mother. One wrong breath, one sudden movement, and the day could end in tragedy. He'd trained for moments of pressure, but never for the sting of being the one under suspicion. He could see it in their eyes, the struggle to reconcile authority with bias, service with fear. Finally, an officer spoke, voice low and uncertain, "You're on the force?" Marcus gave a single nod. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was shame, heavy and complicated. The words they didn't say hung louder than any apology. "We didn't expect you to be one of us." Marcus glanced toward the house, then back at the officers, and something inside him cracked wide open. The pain of every story he'd read, every name that became a headline, was now personal. He realized that his badge hadn't protected him. It had only delayed the inevitable reckoning of being black in America. Then sirens died down, neighbors stepped outside, hesitant, curious. Cameras recorded the awkward stillness of men realizing the weight of their mistake. The same neighbor who had made the call covered her mouth, the color draining from her face. What was supposed to be a celebration now stood as a mirror reflecting everything wrong with how people see each other. And in that reflection, under flashing lights and stunned silence, Marcus understood. This moment wasn't just his humiliation, it was their exposure. He lowered his badge, met their eyes, and thought, not with anger but raw clarity, now you see me. But do you? As the lights faded and the last patrol car rolled away, the quiet felt heavier than the noise had. Guests stood in uneasy clusters, the smell of burnt charcoal and deflated balloons lingering in the warm air. Marcus collected the paper plates and half-melted candles, motion slow and mechanical, a man trying to reassemble normal after it had been stripped bare. The officers hadn't arrested anyone, hadn't even offered more than a muttered apology. But the wound wasn't the kind that came with paperwork. It was something deeper, the knowledge that even years of service, a badge, and a spotless reputation couldn't shield him from suspicion born of skin color. For his daughter, the memory would be sharper still. The night her father, her hero, was treated like a threat for hosting a party in his own backyard. In the days that followed, neighbors posted messages of support, the police chief called it a misunderstanding, and local media covered it as a blip in a busy news cycle. Yet for Marcus, the incident became a quiet turning point. He began speaking to new recruits not about tactics, but about vision, about what it means to look at a person and see them fully, not filtered through fear or stereotype. Because some lessons can't be taught in classrooms or manuals. They're learned in the space between a command and a heartbeat, in the sudden silence where humanity either rises or collapses. That night forced everyone present to see which side they stood on. And maybe that's the truth this story leaves behind. It's not enough to say not racist. The real work begins when we hold up the mirror and ask, what do we do when the reflection isn't what we hope to see?